Hey, it's Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. After a year adjusting to socially distant life, some of us aren't exactly thrilled about the idea of reopening.
I really feel like I noticed the anxiety about reentry after I got my vaccinations. Because I think that at that point, the expectation was, hey, you should be able to assimilate back into the normal world again.
In a minute, psychologist Dr. Ronnie Cunningham has tips for how to confront your reentry anxiety. But first, let's get you caught up. Hundreds of thousands of 12 to 15-year-olds across Washington could be eligible for a COVID vaccine as soon as today. The CDC is reviewing, and we'll learn more about plans here from King County public health officials later this afternoon. Meanwhile, state health officials say they won't consider adding the COVID vaccine to the required immunizations to attend school until it has full FDA approval. Right now, it's approved for emergency use only. A Seattle hotel will be permanently turned into housing for people living homeless. The Inn at Queen Anne has already been operating as supportive housing since the start of the pandemic, but King County made it official yesterday by purchasing the building for $16.5 million. If all goes as planned, the county says it will acquire more hotels and house up to 1,600 people by the end of next year. And it's almost time to play the music and light the lights again at McCaw Hall. Two more arts organizations that share a stage there say they'll be back in person this fall. Pacific Northwest Ballet goes first with performances planned for September. Then in October, Seattle Opera makes its return. Seattle Symphony has already announced plans to return to Benaroya Hall in September. For almost a year and a half, COVID has required us to stay away from people outside our household or our bubble. So many of the things that used to fill the schedule were suddenly canceled. We're moving towards a new normal again. Thanks to vaccines, there are more opportunities to get out and get back to what once was. Employers are talking about bringing workers in. People are starting to travel. Families and friends are talking about summer get-togethers. And it seems like that's what everyone wants. But for some people, this new shift feels really uncomfortable. Dr. Ronnie Cunningham is here to help us understand this reentry anxiety. He's a licensed psychologist who typically works with children, adolescents, and young adults dealing with depression, anxiety, and trauma. Dr. Cunningham, really good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So vaccines are allowing people now to gather more safely. And a lot of people are talking about how excited they are to get back out and get back to life and doing things. But a lot of people, like this mom that we're going to hear from, don't feel that way.
So when the lockdown first started, it was super stressful. I'm already an introverted person. So for me and my family, it's been so great to be together and to be home and to not be so busy. And I'm really not looking forward to reentry. I don't want things to go back to the way they were.
Dr. Cunningham, I am hearing this from a lot of people in my life. What are some of the things that you're hearing from your clients about what they're anxious about right now?
Well, what's interesting about that is not only am I hearing that from clients, I'm hearing that from colleagues as well. I have a colleague that I meet with on a weekly basis, and one of her assertions early on was, hey, this is an opportunity for me and my husband to spend more time with our children. She said pretty much verbatim what that woman on the recording said. Think about it. Before COVID, what were the things that you used to do that you don't do anymore? There was a sense of trauma having to adjust to that. Having someone suddenly say, hey, you can't go outside anymore. You can't send your children to school anymore. You have to figure out how to work from home. And we got used to that. And now we're getting told, okay, now it's time to re-enter the world. Now it's time to reboot the economy and get back out there and go back to school and go back to work and enjoy yourselves. And not only have people gotten used to these routines and really feeling kind of comfortable and safe, they're still scared about leaving and starting over. And what's life going to look like now that we have to learn how to live with this pandemic? Even as we have a vaccine, not everybody's taking it. So it makes sense to me that there's a lot of fear.
It's fascinating to me what really happened because we were told to go home, that being home in your house was safe. We adjusted. It started to feel safe at home. Doing laundry in between phone calls at work became a thing. It became comforting to have our stuff at our fingertips. What can we do to help manage this new feeling?
There's a lot we can actually do. You probably want to start small. I'll just recall my own transition. After I got vaccinated, I was vaccinated in February. And even prior to February, I would see one client once a week. We had a whole routine set up where we would spray everything down. Everybody wore masks. And I was really scared to come back, to be honest with you. Even after I got the vaccine, I was scared to. I'm actually in my real office now, though, because I've been practicing little by little, getting back to what my life used to look like. That's what I would definitely say to anybody who is considering getting back out into life. Educate yourself, use science, use CDC guidelines and Washington state guidelines. Find friends, find people who may be in the same position that you are in terms of their reentry level. Give yourself the opportunity to do that slowly. The sooner you get started, the better it'll be. In fact, I am practicing because CDC guidelines tell us I'm vaccinated. I can be outside without a mask on. My daughter had a softball tournament this weekend, and I made sure I didn't wear a mask. At first, it was very uncomfortable. I actually think it's one of the perks that comes with getting vaccinated. I'm safe. The science tells me I'm safe, and all the doctors and researchers I've talked to at the university tell me I'm safe.
There is comfort in information, right? Staying informed can give you the information you need to feel more comfortable taking risks or perceived risks in the new normal. But this really was an interesting time for people who already had anxiety. That new anxiety in this new world is kicking up like it is for this woman. We're going to hear a little piece here.
I don't know. I still feel nervous. I know that we have talked about going back to church again because they are doing the social distancing indoors and masking and all that stuff. But I actually have great anxiety about that. Part of it is I already had social anxiety about being in big crowds, and so I always struggled going to church or going anywhere that had a lot of people, and especially when you had to interact with them. And so I actually have a lot of anxiety about that, not just because of COVID, but already because of my own issues.
For people who had anxiety before this, they are going to have to get back to the things that made them anxious. What can people learn from this experience that might help them moving forward?
This is going to be really hard. One of the things you got to understand is like the difference between fear and anxiety. Fear is what happens if you and I were suddenly in the same room with a giant king cobra snake. I don't know about you. I would feel fear inside my body and I would be screaming right now. With anxiety, what happens is, let's say one of my colleagues throws a plastic snake in my office. I'm not in danger and I'm still acting that way. My fear is valid. My anxiety is valid. So the thing that I can learn from this is to actually stay, in my case, in the room with the plastic snake and learn hopefully one of two things. My fear comes down and I can associate, oh, that's a plastic snake and not a real one. Or my fear may stay high and I can still stay in the room.
My old therapist used to say to me, the feel is real, but the why is a lie. That the reasons we fear things may not be what we think they are.
That's right. I like that. In this case, leaving the room is staying at home. It genuinely has kept people alive. And that's important in the pandemic. So the world is actually full of some plastic snakes and some real snakes, and it's hard to tell the difference between the two.
I am finding that my threshold for larger groups of people is pretty limited right now, that I feel emotionally exhausted after, say, 4 or 5 people in one day.
Yeah, that makes sense because we haven't been around a lot of people. And so adding more people to your social circle should increase stress. Give yourself a chance to recover from your attempts to re-enter. Have a plan for what that's going to look like and how you're going to take care of yourself. If you and I were going to run a marathon, I can't run 26 miles right now. I can run a couple of miles. So I'm just going to go just far enough past that it's challenging and I'll make it. And when that gets easy, I'm going to add on a little bit more.
Yeah. I think it's so important what you said, that the anxiety response is natural. That's such an important thing to say because people think, oh, well, I should want to get back out there. Come on, we're social creatures.
We are social creatures. And now we're trying to get back to some semblance of whatever our new normal is going to become.
Some people really enjoyed their solitude, though, and COVID was a great way to have an excuse to not do any of that stuff. And now that vaccines are coming into play, there is double pressure now to get back out there. And I wonder, how do you manage that sense of obligation and pressure when you really want to say no?
Right. I love that question, actually, because to me, it's not an either or proposition. It's a both and proposition. I don't think you have to give up isolation or solitude if that's what you enjoy, and you can find ways to go back to work and socialize so that you can find more balance. For a lot of people, I think actually we've discovered some things that we didn't know about what home life and work life could be. And that's been healthy. Again, for lack of a better term, it's not either or, it's both and.
I love that you're saying this because this is an opportunity to reset in some ways what we really think is important and what we allow back into our lives.
I'm asking this to my clients, like, what's the thing that you miss the most about what life used to be like? What's the thing that you appreciate about your life now? And what's something you'll look forward to? Giving yourself something to look forward to may also help generate the motivation needed to overcome the challenges that face us.
How do you know, though, when you're just avoiding stuff?
There's a saying in one of the therapies that I do that it's called avoid avoiding. The idea is to avoiding going out. Go out, do the opposite action. Right now, a lot of us are saying, okay, let's just stay in the safe cocoon. We don't have to go back out in the world because it's too dangerous for us. Being at home is comforting and reinforcing. And there's a way to do this that's measured, that has evidence and science behind it, and that is meaningful. This is an opportunity to do that without necessarily having to lose the solitude either.
Yeah, and I see it as a real opportunity to let back the healthy stuff and try to avoid some of the stuff that didn't really work for us pre-pandemic.
Right.
How about a clean slate, Dr. Cunningham?
Wouldn't we all love to have a clean slate, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for letting me be here. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. Dr. Ronnie Cunningham is a licensed psychologist in Seattle. Thanks again. Seattle Now is produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez, Clare McGrane, and Jason Pagano. Diana Opong produced today's show. Matt Jorgensen does our music. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you tomorrow.